Hello everyone and welcome to the yet another episode of Exploring Java. So in this video I'm going to focus on to the latest release onto the Java JDK 24 and I'm going to cover what are some of the features or new things that are a part of this JDK 24. So over the past 3 decades, Java has consistently adapted to the changing landscape of software development, right? And with each release, it has introduced some of the innovations that empower developer to build robust, efficient, and scalable application. And I think JDK 24 is no exception that one. So it's basically shaping the direction where the Java is heading towards, right? So I'm in this video, as I said, I'm going to explore some of the key features and enhancement which are part of the Java 24. So I'm not going to cover all these features, right? I'm going to cover few of them. Which in my opinions probably are more relevant in terms of we as developers, right? Okay, so before that, I quickly want to touch base on one thing. So if you see any of these releases, there are mainly three categories. Number one is sometimes they have added experimental. There are something like this. There is nothing added in the braces, and then there are previews like a preview. Second preview and so on and so forth, right? So experimental, we know that these features are still experimental, means they are not shaped yet. They are the ideas being added into the system. So which means they are, I don't think you can probably take a look at it, understand, okay, what is the initial intent, but this is something which probably we don't want to touch base. And there are some features which are GA, means they are generally available for us, right? Which means they are a part of the Java specifications and now fully available and can be used onto the production systems. Okay, but there is an interesting thing which is a preview. So what exactly are these preview, right? What it means, and there are certain variations. For example, preview, second preview, there are third preview, second, fourth, so on, and it goes like that, right? So in simple terms, a preview feature is a new language or a JVM feature that is fully implemented, right? But not yet part of the Java specification. So if you know about the Java, there is a Java specification, right? It follows the specification for each and everything within the language, right? So what it means is these features are actually fully implemented. They basically are kind of meeting all the criterias, but they are not part of the Java specification. So these features are made available to the developers so they can try them out, give a feedback, and then they can be used to shape the final version of these ones. Another thing is, as I said, by default these features are not available, means as part of your, so if you want to use these features, you have to tell the compiler and the JVM to use these features. So there is a flag which you have to pass to the compiler and to the JVM to tell them I want to use these preview features, right? Another question is, why are there so many different iterations, like for example preview, second preview, third preview, so on and so forth, right? So one of the fundamental reason in my understanding is some of these features are so fundamental or impactful, like pattern matching and few others, right, that they need the refinement based upon the real world usage. So they are into that phase where the team is consistently getting this feedback and then eventually implying those feedback. All right, so with that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through some of the features, and the number one feature I'm gonna cover is the this one, JEP 495, right? Which is simple source files and the instance main method. Okay. All right. So I think one of the complaint that is very consistent within the Java community or of anyone who is new to the Java is there is a lot of code, right, that someone has to write in order to start learning about it, right? And it's overwhelming. So let's take example of this hello world. If I have to simply write a hello world, right, I have to basically, as a complete beginner, what you have to do is you have to write all these code, correct? Okay, and there are a lot of things going on in this one. For example, there is this class number one. Okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, there is this public, this is class, you have to explain someone, okay, why you are creating this one. Then there is again static void, then system.out.println, so and so forth, right? So just to print a simple hello world message, right? It's a lot of to for a beginner. Think about the beginner, right? If for a beginner, in order to write this hello world, there is a lot to take in before even learning the basic programming concept, right? And this is a consistent feedback. If you use some of the other languages, for example Python or few others, right, they are very kind of, in terms of the syntax, right, they are very easygoing. In order to write a simple hello world, you just have to write a single program. All right. So in Java 24, I think they have heard this feedback, and it's basically not with the Java 24. It's still into the 4th preview, right? So they have introduced two key features to make things easier, at least for someone who have started their journey in Java, right? So instance main method. In now I can simply write the main method. So there are a lot of changes that has happened on those one. So number one is the main method, right? So as of now with 24 and enabling this feature, I can now write the main method without using all these static and void, right? So what I can simply do is I can remove all of these things, and this will still be a valid syntax. One thing which you have to be basically careful is if you are using any of these editors, right? How do I enable these features? For example, I'm saying language level is 24 preview. I'm basically enabling preview. So for now, if I go back and do something like that, right? So I will start getting this message saying this is method main does not have the signature public static void main, which is the standard signature. So in order to do that, what you have to do is you go back to the project structure and you say I'm gonna enable the preview mode. Once you enable the preview mode, everything whatever is part of the preview will be available for you. So make sure you are enabling those flags in your editor. All right, so this is one of the changes that has been added. So with that one, at least many things are, for example, what does a static means, what does a public means, right? Or even if you want, you can also remove these arguments. It's still going to be a valid one, right? And as a beginner who is just starting their journey, I think if you add all these things, there is a lot to take in, and maybe they will say I quit because there are a lot of things I have to write. Okay. There is another thing which again that's a part of this. So if you see, Java is a object oriented programming language. Everything is an object in itself, right? So you have to start things with the object, but then for a beginner it's very hard to explain what public means, right? What class means, or why I have to write all of these things just to print a hello world, right? You can explain them once they start getting it. So they have also given you an option where you can also remove these things. All right, it is still going to be a valid syntax. So things has been kind of they are going into that direction. Okay, we can also probably modify this code a little bit, where again you have to explain someone saying what system is, why out, why println, right? So what you can do is go ahead and then remove all of these things and say println. Even if you run this program, you're gonna get the same output saying hello world. Okay, so a lot of things has been taken care of it, and I think this was again when we started, even when I started it, right? I think first code was overwhelming. Why so many things I have to do in order to write a simple hello world application? Now the question is, Java is object-oriented programming. How come they are allowing me to create this a simple hello world and not basically creating any object or any classes for those one? The answer is compiler. So under the hood, it's still following that syntax, but it's making it easier for me as a programmer, as a developer, to write that code. So if you go back and see the compiled version of this hello world application, right? So let's see that. Okay, so this is the compiled version of the same class, right, that we have written. So there are a few things that are a part of it. Number one is, if you see final class hello world, they have created a class hello world, right? Whatever the file name we had, void main, println, so everything has been added there, right? So there are a few things that hasn't. So there is the package, import package, java.io. If you go here, if you look closely, this package, right, or this class, public final class IO, which is becoming sort of a baseline for this, right, for the compiler to kind of write that additional code for us, right? This was added in Java JDK 23. So they are adapting to it, which means they are kind of taking care of all those things for us. All right. Okay. Okay. Number 2 is the pattern matching. Right. So this was introduced in Java 23 and currently it's into the second preview. All right. So what is pattern matching, right? If you remember, right, before, if you have to use the switch statement, right, you can only use the reference type in your switch statement, right? You cannot use the primitive types. But with this pattern matching that has been introduced as part of your JEP 488, you can use now primitive types during the your switch statement, like int, long, double, boolean, so and so forth, right? And there is a pattern matching that has also been added with the help of instance of and switch. So instance of now you can use as in combination with the primitive type. Okay, so let's take this example. And I think before we take an example, the question is, okay, why this matters, right? So number one is, I think it is gonna reduce a lot of boilerplate code. That is number one. It is definitely gonna make our code more cleaner, easier to follow, because one of the restriction that was a part of the switch statement was the reference type. I can only use the reference type. So that has been taken out, right? Which means I can probably rewrite. There are many codes which I can rewrite and make them a little bit more easier to understand. All right. And then again, I think before that, probably these primitives were treated as sort of a second class citizen. So now they are a part of the mainstream, right? So let's take an example where how this is gonna help make our code more cleaner, more consistent, easier to follow. All right. All right, let's take a very simple example where you have to classify a score for a student, right? Based upon the score they are getting, you have to classify them, either they have a grade A, B, C, D, F, or something like that, right? And we know that scores are, or your numbers are, probably as an int value, right? Okay, so if you have to create that one, right, what you're gonna do is, traditionally, let's take one example, right? You will have something like this, right, in traditional cases, because you cannot use int in the switch statement. You will pass this to some sort of your method, and then you have these if else conditions, so and so forth, right? You can make it a little bit more compact, but the entire idea is you have to use these sort of a logic. Now with the Java 24, right, this has become a little bit more easier for me. So if I have to rewrite this code, okay, what I'm gonna do is, let's say I'm gonna say old for this one, and I'm gonna rewrite this code here. Let me close this one. And I'm gonna rewrite this one. So if you see here, now my code is, number one, is more compact, but more than that, it is easier to read and it's consistent. So I'm able to use int as part of my switch statement, right? Which was not earlier the case. This is not int. You can now use any of your primitive types as part of your switch statement. All right. Okay. Then, all right. Another thing is your, I think the instance of, which is again a part of your JEP 488, right? This is again a part of the same primitive pattern matching, right? So before this one, if you have to use instance of, right, the only way you can use instance of is with the object. For example, before this one, right, if it comes, this is how you're gonna use the instance of variable, right? That was the only way you could have used that one. Okay, but with moving with your this new release, right, you can simply use even any of your primitive types. For example, I can rewrite this code and let's say I'm going to say value 1, right? It's perfectly fine. There is no error in those one, right? If you run this one, it's going to run the code without any, it's a double value with 3.14. And I think this is good because whenever we have to use earlier in our code instance of, right, even if we know it's an int value, we have to use the wrappers, we have to convert it to an object. That was unnecessary, not only for our code but even within the system, right? It has to do all these additional things, which kind of a number one is adding some duplicate code, making it unnecessary for us. And I think again, primitive were not treated the way they should have been. All right. Okay, so that's that. All right. Okay, so next one I'm gonna talk about the flexible constructor bodies, right, which is a part of the JEP 492, and I think this is in the third preview. It's an exciting feature actually. So if you are already have experience working in Java, right, so constructors are used to initialize the object, right? But and this feature was introduced in the first preview was introduced in Java 22, right? But in order to use the constructors, there was a very strict rule. So what it happened is, if you want to call another constructor using this, or a super class constructor using a super method, right, this has to be the very first statement in your code. For example, I have this person class, there is a constructor which is taking one argument. I am just printing it out, right? We can do something else, but what I want to explain is now the user is extending a person, so there is a relation between. Let's assume that this information is also passed to the parent class. Okay, now if I have to pass this information using a super until Java 22, the super has to be the very first statement into this one, right? Now, let's assume that you want to verify that this name is valid with some syntax, something like that, right? Can I do that? Let's say you want to say before this one, if name dot is empty, throw name cannot be empty. So as soon as you do that, there is this error being thrown out by the compiler, which says call to super must be the first statement in your constructor body, right? And this was a kind of a sort of a restriction. So in order to bypass this one, right, normally what we were doing is we were using, let's say, a static method, something like that, which says verify input. And what you will do is you just remove this code and then you call this from here. So that was a workaround. It's not a very good, it's a dirty solution, but this was a workaround. So you can call that static method, verify the input, and then it eventually will call the super, right? Not a very elegant solution, but it was a workaround, right? With that, this new feature, what has been happened is, and let me quickly enable the preview feature. I basically disable that one, so I'm going to enable it. All right, now with this new feature, again, this is into the second preview. Now it gives you the flexibility to use these sort of a verification. So instead of going here, I can just add this as part of, let's say, remove this one, right? And I want to verify the input of before going somewhere else, right? So I can very well add all the input here, remove this static method. Okay, so now before this one, you couldn't do anything before the super, or this has to be the very first statement. With this one, you can all these things. So a more cleaner, more natural and less, I think, a jumping around code, right? So this is again a very good kind of a change that has been introduced, because these were some of the restrictions which kind of eventually lead to some of these workarounds. Not very good solutions, but yes, we have to do these kind of things, which means people will find some sort of a workaround, right? But again, in my preview or in my thought process, this is again a very interesting and very powerful idea. All right, okay. So next one I'm gonna cover is the class file APIs, which is a part of the JEP 484. And again, this was introduced in, I think, Java 22, and then there was some refinement in 23, and eventually now it is a part of the main release of Java 24, right? Okay, so what is this class file API? So it introduced a new standard API in Java to read, analyze, and transform .class files. All right, okay. So that's what is .class file. That's the compiled bytecode of your Java program. So until now, if you want to inspect or probably find out what is the class file look like, or you want to manipulate that class file, you had to rely on third-party libraries, for example, ASM or BCEL, so and so forth, right? And there was no standardized operation in order to, because all these third parties have their own ways to kind of let us manipulate those class files, right? And that could also lead, I think, if there is no standardization, that could always lead to more maintenance and compatibility issues, right? But with this JEP 484, now there is a official API, or there is a standardization way where Java gives you a more clean and supported and as well as a future-proof way to work with your class files, right? Rather than going outside using them third parties, now everything is built into it, right? So the question is what we can do with it. Number one, you can always inspect your class structure. What are the methods, fields, annotations looks like, etc., etc., right? You can modify or transform your bytecode. Now you have that API to do all these manipulations, right? Then you can always analyze your compiled class for tooling, securities, and optimization processes, correct? Now let's take one example here. So I have this class, okay. Let me see if I can find this one. So I have this class already compiled, this class, okay. So let me show you the code first. All right, so I have this class, by the way, right, the pattern matching. So if you look into this class, I have few things. This is a class name, I have few methods, so and so forth, right? And there is a compiled version. I know that where my compiled class is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this one. So I'm using the path number one, right? And then within the path, what I'm gonna do is, so first thing I'm doing is reading that one, okay? And then I'm gonna say class file, or I will say class model, something like that, okay. Let me remove this one. So I'm saying class model, class file of part. So I'm basically getting hold of my class file. Now once I have this one, I have all the way to manipulate this or find out all the details of this class using the standard API. For example, I can always say what should I, maybe the very simple example is, let's say, print out the class name, okay. So I can say class model dot this class dot name, right? Name, okay, dot name. If you run this one, you say pattern matching, right? I can go a little bit more ahead. I can also start kind of analyzing all the fields and everything else. Let's take maybe a more closer look into some of the other things. All right, so I can go a little bit more detail. For example, I want to find out what are the different methods, right? So what I'm going to do is, in the class model, I'm saying give me all the methods for this one, which is a method model, and then I'm printing all the methods. So if you run this one, it says these are the methods, right? This is the out of the box. Then I have a classifying gold score, classifying score, right? I can also do something else. For example, I want to find out what is the parent for this class. So we'll say class model dot. So I can also print this one, and if you run this code again, it says java.lang.object. We know that if there is no kind of any parent class, object is always the parent class of those one. So the entire idea is now you have a standard API where you can go ahead and use this standard API to manipulate your bytecode, do all the action, whatever you want to do, which was earlier was kind of a third-party system. Okay, so I'm not going to cover all of the features because some of them requires a different video, right? For example, there is a stream gatherer, which is a part of this JDK 24. It's a very interesting and a powerful feature, but I think I won't be able to cover in this video. Otherwise, maybe the length will go more than 20-30 minutes, right? So stream API in Java, it provides, if you remember, right, this provides a set of built-in operation like map, filter, flat map. So in stream, right, there are two ways. You basically process the stream, right? Or I would call it as more of a, how I should put it. Okay. I'm not going to cover all the features. Those are available in Java 24 because some of them requires a different videos altogether. But there are a few things which I kind of want to touch base before I close this video, right? One of them is the stream gatherer. If you remember the stream API, right, the operations are divided into two parts. Intermediate operations that generates either a new streams, right? And then we have the terminal operators that create the results, or we may have something as the side effect of those ones, right? And when you have to probably you need to work on a more complex transformation, you want to collect the streams into a custom data structure. There are only pre-built of things, right? Built-in operation like map, filter, flat map, so on and so forth. But if there are complex object involved, you may have to have your custom data structure, right? But I think stream gatherer is an interesting feature which address these some sort of limitations. And this is introduced as part of the Java, JDK 24, right? It makes it easier to gather elements from a stream into a custom collections and handle more specific collection behavior, right? So again, I'm not going to touch base on this one because it, as I said, right, it requires a separate video in itself, right? There are a few other things which I just want to touch base. One of them is if you have worked from the very old Java, for example, Java 2, 3, 4, you might have heard about the security manager, right? So as part of this one, so the security manager will be permanently disabled. I remember when I was working on, I think Java 5, I was more curious. Okay, I used to heard about the security manager, but I think with all these modern Java or JDKs, I have hardly used security manager, which is a part of your java.lang security manager, right? So I think around Java 17 that was marked as a deprecated, and this will permanently be disabled, which means you won't be able to even use it, right? That's that. And I think there is another interesting feature which is AOT, ahead of the time compilations. So again, that requires a little bit more context in order to understand how JVM basically works, how the startup things works, and so on and so forth, right? So that again need a separate video in itself, but I highly encourage you to go ahead, read about it. It's an interesting feature. It's kind of gonna optimize the startup time for your JVM, right? I hope this gives you an at least insight what are the new interesting features that are a part of the JDK 24, and I was more focused on to the features which I believe we as a programmer, as a developers are gonna use from in our day-to-day life, right? And there are other features as which are more of a internal within the JDK, but go ahead, read through those. If something is interesting to you, I would highly encourage you to do some experimenting around it. I hope you like this video. And if you like this one, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I keep on publishing videos around Java and its ecosystem. So what I have learned, I try to share my findings, my understandings, or my knowledge with all of you. Once again, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video.